It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in a small, quiet town, the kind of town where everyone knows everyone else, and surprises are few and far between. The local McDonald's buzzed with soft conversation, the rhythmic tapping of fries being dunked in oil, and the occasional squeal of children enjoying their happy meals. The scent of fries and warm apple pies hung heavy in the air, a familiar and oddly comforting aroma. In the corner booth, mostly unnoticed by the customers bustling in and out, sat Keanu Reeves. Known worldwide for his roles in blockbuster films, today he wasn't Neo from The Matrix or John Wick. He was just a man enjoying a brief moment of peace in a fast food restaurant, dressed casually in jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. Keanu sipped a soda and looked out the window, watching as clouds drifted lazily across the sky. His presence brought a kind of quiet reverence to the space, though few recognized him. Meanwhile, a small boy, no older than 5, stood hesitantly near the ketchup dispenser. He was holding a small action figure, its paint chipped from love and use. He looked lost, nervous. His mother had gone to the restroom, leaving him alone for just a moment. But to the child, that moment stretched into something long and unsettling. His tiny sneakers shuffled on the tiled floor as he looked around the restaurant. His wide eyes scanned the booths, passing over strangers chatting, teenagers scrolling their phones, and families deep in conversation. But then his gaze stopped, locked on the one man who looked safe. Something about Keanu's calm demeanor drew the boy in. Maybe it was the gentle way he stirred his drink or the soft expression on his face. He didn't look hurried or distracted. The boy clutched his toy tighter and walked cautiously toward the booth. Keanu noticed the little one before he reached him. He looked down with curiosity as the boy stood beside him, silent for a beat. Then, with trembling hands, the child gently tugged at Keanu's sleeve. The actor turned, leaning down just slightly. What happened next would alter the course of both their lives. The boy leaned in and whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Keanu's expression changed in an instant, from relaxed and calm to pale and shaken. Keanu's body stiffened. The whisper was short, but it hit him like a freight train. He slowly put down his drink, his brow furrowed in disbelief. In all his years on all the sets and in all his travels, he had never encountered something so real, so raw, so terrifying from such a tiny voice. He glanced around. No one else had noticed. It was as if time had stopped just for them. With trembling hands, Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He looked down at the child, his voice soft but certain. "You're very brave," he said, tapping the emergency dial. "I'm going to get you help." He pressed the phone to his ear. 911, what's your emergency? "This is Keanu Reeves," he said without hesitation. "I'm at the McDonald's on Main Street. A child here just told me something very serious. I believe his sister is in danger. We need officers and medics dispatched right away." The dispatcher, recognizing the urgency in his voice, didn't hesitate. Keanu calmly relayed everything the boy had told him, down to the smallest detail. Other customers had started to notice. Some glanced over with mild curiosity. Others paused mid-bite, picking up on the sudden shift in energy. But Keanu remained focused. He put the phone down and looked at the boy, now seated beside him in the booth. "You're safe now," Keanu said, his voice low and reassuring. "Help is on the way. You're not alone." The boy nodded silently, a tear rolling down his cheek. Keanu gently placed an arm around his small shoulders. No cameras, no spotlights, just one man and a child, bound by a whisper that carried the weight of desperation. As they waited in the booth, Keanu's mind raced. The words the boy had whispered kept echoing in his ears, chilling him to the bone. "She's in the basement. Mommy said not to tell anyone." The boy's voice had been soft, but filled with an innocence that made the message all the more heartbreaking. Keanu looked at the small child again, this time truly seeing the pain behind those big brown eyes. His hands trembled, not out of fear for himself, but out of overwhelming empathy. He had portrayed heroes on screen, but now he was being called to be one in real life. He leaned down again gently and asked, "What's your name, buddy?" The boy hesitated. "Eli." "And your sister?" "Sophie," he whispered, almost as if speaking her name would bring the danger closer. Keanu took a deep breath. He knew he had to keep Eli calm until authorities arrived, but he also knew there was a story behind the whisper, one that needed to be heard. He asked softly, "Can you tell me where you live, Eli?" The boy nodded and gave a vague address. Keanu typed it quickly into his phone and sent it to the dispatcher, who stayed on the line. Then, slowly, Eli started to open up. "She cries a lot," he said, eyes downcast. "Mommy says we can't go downstairs. But I heard Sophie crying. I tried to open the door, but Mommy locked it." Keanu's heart sank. Every word was like a dagger. How long had this been going on? Why hadn't anyone noticed? The minutes dragged like hours. Each passing second felt heavier than the last. Keanu kept one arm around Eli and one eye on the door. He nodded calmly, kept talking gently, reassuring the boy he did the right thing. But inside, he was fighting a storm of emotions. It wasn't long before the sound of sirens pierced the gentle hum of the small town. The red and blue lights flickered through the McDonald's windows, painting the walls with streaks of urgency. Customers who had previously been whispering and glancing at Keanu now stood, watching in silence as 2 police cruisers and an ambulance pulled into the parking lot. Keanu stood up slowly, keeping one hand on Eli's shoulder as if to shield him from the sudden shift in energy. He gave the boy a soft smile. "That's them, buddy. Everything's going to be okay now." Eli looked toward the door, eyes wide but uncertain. The moment the first officer entered, tall, uniformed, and alert, Keanu raised a hand to catch his attention. "This is Eli," Keanu said gently. "He's the one who needs your help." The officers approached with professionalism and calm, but even they faltered slightly when they saw who was standing before them. It wasn't every day that Keanu Reeves handed over a child in need, but they didn't stop to marvel. They had a mission now. "What's going on?" the lead officer asked, crouching down to Eli's level. Keanu spoke softly, retelling what he'd heard, every detail, every whispered word. He explained what Eli had said about Sophie being in the basement and the mother locking the door. The officers took it all in, nodding gravely. One of them knelt beside Eli and asked gently, "Do you remember your house number, sweetheart?" Eli sniffled, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his hoodie. 339, the blue house with the big tree. That was enough. The officers sprang into action, speaking into their radios. Within moments, a team was dispatched to the address. A paramedic came over to check on Eli, kneeling in front of him with a soft voice and kind eyes. Keanu didn't leave his side. As the chaos gently unfolded around them, the restaurant had gone completely quiet. No more fries sizzling, no more children laughing. Just silent awe as the patrons watched something incredible happen. They weren't just witnessing a celebrity moment. They were witnessing a man become a hero. A woman, Eli's mother, rushed in moments later, frantic and confused. She froze at the sight of police, her face draining of color, but the officers moved quickly, pulling her aside to speak with her. Eli gripped Keanu's hand tightly, hiding behind his leg. The officer's questions were sharp, direct, and when she stumbled on her answers, her fate became clear. One officer stepped outside and gave a nod to someone in the cruiser. The team at the house had made contact. Confirmation came over the radio. "We found the girl. She's alive but weak." A hush fell over the group. Eli looked up at Keanu with eyes full of tears. "They found her." Keanu knelt again, smiling for the first time since this began. "Yes, they did. You saved her, Eli." The boy burst into tears, not out of fear but out of sheer relief. He wrapped his tiny arms around Keanu's neck, holding him tight, the kind of hug that came from deep within the heart. Keanu didn't move. He just held him back. And in that moment, no camera, no movie roll, no fame could compare to the weight of what had just happened. Miles away from the McDonald's, police cruisers pulled up to a small blue house with peeling paint and a massive oak tree in the front yard. Just as Eli had described, officers wasted no time. With guns drawn and voices firm, they entered the residence. The door creaked open, revealing a home in disarray. Cluttered counters, unwashed dishes, and a silence that screamed secrets. They moved swiftly through the rooms until they found the basement door, locked, just like Eli had said. A heavy padlock secured it from the outside. One of the officers gave the command, and a bolt cutter made quick work of it. The door groaned open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Flashlights flickered on as they moved carefully downward. The air was musty and cold. The walls, unfinished and damp, echoed with the faintest sound, barely a whisper. Then they heard it. Soft cry? At the far end of the basement, huddled on a thin mattress with a threadbare blanket wrapped around her tiny body, was Sophie. Her eyes blinked against the sudden light, and for a moment she didn't move, afraid it was another trick. But when an officer called her name, softly, kindly, her face crumbled. "Are you Sophie?" he asked gently. She nodded. "You're safe now," he whispered. The officer wrapped her in a blanket, lifting her carefully into his arms. She was underweight, frail, and clearly traumatized, but alive. As they emerged from the basement, the neighbors had started to gather outside. The sight of police cars and flashing lights had drawn them in, but none of them could have imagined what had been hiding just a few doors down. The lead officer radioed back to the team at McDonald's. "We have the girl. I repeat, Sophie is safe and in custody. Request immediate medical support." Back at the restaurant, Keanu's eyes widened as he heard the confirmation over the dispatcher speaker. "Thank God," he whispered. He looked down at Eli, who was still holding tightly to his hand, and gave him a small nod. "You did it." As the sirens gradually faded, the scene inside McDonald's began to shift from one of tension to quiet relief. The officers, now back inside, spoke with Eli's mother, who was still standing near the door, shaken by the reality of what had transpired. The whispers from the restaurant's patrons became more frequent as they realized the gravity of the situation. The boy they had watched in silence had just led the authorities to a life-saving rescue. Keanu, though, had his attention solely focused on Eli. The little boy's face was a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and disbelief as he clutched Keanu's hand. The comfort of the actor's presence a steady anchor amidst the storm. Moments later, the door swung open again. Sophie walked in, wrapped in a blanket, held gently in the arms of a paramedic. Her face was pale, but the brightness in her eyes had returned, a spark of recognition flashing in them when she saw Eli standing with Keanu. "Eli." Sophie's voice broke the quiet, her small hands reaching out toward him. Eli's eyes welled with tears. He took a step forward, and then, as if the floodgates had opened, he ran into his sister's arms. The two children embraced tightly, clinging to one another as though afraid the world would take them apart again. Keanu stepped back, watching the siblings, a quiet smile spreading across his face. His heart swelled with the beauty of the moment. No cameras, no flashing lights, just two children safe in each other's arms. It wasn't just a rescue. It was a bond that no one could ever break. The paramedic stepped forward to check Sophie's vitals, and Eli's mother, now visibly sobbing, rushed to her children. She dropped to her knees, her hands shaking as she pulled them both into an embrace. It was a reunion filled with tears, apologies, and a promise never to let go. Keanu watched the scene unfold, and for a long moment he stood there, a silent witness to their joy. It wasn't the recognition or the praise that mattered to him. It was the raw, powerful connection he had seen between Eli, Sophie, and their mother. That was the real story. That was the heroism. "Thank you," a voice said from behind him. Keanu turned to find one of the officers standing near him, his expression full of gratitude. The officer had seen the whole thing, The whisper, the phone call, the quiet heroism. He wasn't asking for attention, but Keanu had saved the day in a way no one could ignore. "You're welcome," Keanu replied softly. "I was just in the right place at the right time." The officer smiled, his eyes saying more than words ever could. Keanu's presence had been an unspoken lifeline, one that led to a life being saved. Eli turned to look at Keanu, his small face now bright and full of admiration. "Are you really Keanu Reeves?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. Keanu chuckled gently. "I am. But today, I'm just someone who helped out a friend." Eli smiled, then hugged him once more. This time, the hug wasn't out of fear or desperation. It was a hug of pure thanks, a moment of quiet joy shared between a child and the man who had given him back his sister. As the paramedics continued to tend to Sophie, Keanu took a step back, his heart full. He didn't need the spotlight. He didn't need the recognition. In this moment, he had been part of something far more important, a real-life story of courage, kindness, and the profound connection between strangers who became heroes. As the paramedics finished their work, preparing to transport Sophie to the hospital, the atmosphere in McDonald's began to return to a sense of normalcy. The crowd, once buzzing with anxious energy, had quieted down, leaving behind the hum of calm conversation and the occasional clink of a soda cup being set down. Keanu lingered near the door, his gaze returning to the siblings as they sat, now wrapped in warm blankets, their mother holding them close. The tears had slowed, replaced by quiet smiles and soft laughter, real joy that came from the relief of knowing their nightmare had come to an end. But Keanu knew it was time for him to leave. The sirens, the rescue, and the tears had all faded into the background of his thoughts, replaced by the understanding that the real heroes were the ones who lived this story every day. They were the ones who would continue to fight and protect, just as Eli and Sophie's mother had fought for her children, just as Eli had been brave enough to act when it mattered most. He turned, his eyes catching the reflection of his own face in the window, a reminder that he wasn't just a character in the movies anymore. Today, he was part of something real, something beautiful. Stepping toward the door, Keanu glanced back one last time, his heart full. The children, their mother, and the paramedics had all become a part of his story now, one he would carry with him, a reminder that sometimes life wasn't about the fame or fortune, but about being in the right place when someone needed you most. As he walked toward his car, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the street, the kind of light that spoke of endings and new beginnings, of moments that shaped us all, even in the smallest of ways. Just as he reached his car, he heard a small voice calling his name, "Keanu." He turned to see Eli standing near the door of McDonald's, a smile spreading across his face. The boy's small hands waved frantically, his eyes filled with admiration. "Thank you for everything," Eli called out, his voice carrying the sincerity of a heart too big for his small frame. Keanu smiled, his heart warming. "Take care of each other," he called back. "That's the most important thing." Eli nodded vigorously, his eyes wide with the innocence of youth, but there was wisdom in them now. A lesson had been learned, about kindness, bravery, and what it truly meant to be a hero. As Keanu slid into the driver's seat, he took a deep breath, the weight of the day settling into his chest. He was just one man, but in that moment, he had been part of something far greater. The car started, and as he pulled away from McDonald's, Keanu knew this wasn't the end of his journey. It was just another chapter in a story that would keep unfolding, one unexpected moment at a time. Keanu drove through the quiet streets, the world around him blending into a wash of soft oranges and pinks as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The hum of the engine was soothing, almost meditative, as the weight of the day's events slowly sank in. He couldn't help but replay the moments, the lives he had touched, and how a simple act of kindness had shifted something deep inside him. But as the miles stretched out before him, something pulled at his mind, something he couldn't quite name. A feeling, a stirring like a whisper in the back of his thoughts. Pulling into a small park, he parked his car under a tree, its branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. He sat for a moment, his hand resting on the steering wheel, lost in the quiet peace that surrounded him. The day had started like any other, but now, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky above him, it felt like he had witnessed a transformation. Not just in Eli, not just in Sophie, but in himself. There was something to be said about moments like these, when the world seemed to stop just for a moment, and the lives we touch become the most important part of our journey. And in that moment, Keanu realized that he had never truly understood what it meant to be a part of something bigger than himself until today. The connections we form, no matter how fleeting, leave a mark that stays with us forever. As he sat there, a car pulled into the parking lot. A young couple got out, laughing softly, holding hands. They passed by his car, unaware of his presence, but to Keanu, it was as though their joy was a mirror of the happiness that had blossomed in his own heart. He had made a difference today, and perhaps that was enough. But as he stepped out of the car and stretched, he felt a deep, undeniable urge to keep going, to keep making a difference, to keep being a part of these moments, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Because the truth was, every story, every person, every family was a piece of the bigger picture. And in this vast, chaotic world, each of us had the power to leave a lasting impact. Keanu smiled, glancing up at the stars now shining brightly overhead. It was as if the universe was telling him that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The next chapter was already waiting, and he was ready for it. The night had settled in, quiet and still, as Keanu made his way back home. The soft hum of his car's engine was the only sound that accompanied him. As he turned down the familiar street leading to his house, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Something had shifted in him after the events of the day. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a sudden interruption to his thoughts. Pulling over to the side of the road, Keanu took out his phone, noticing the name on the screen. It was an unknown number. For a brief moment he hesitated, but something told him he needed to answer. "Hello, Keanu. This is Detective Harris from the police department," came the voice on the other end, calm yet with a sense of urgency. "We've made some progress on the case. I thought you should know." Keanu's stomach dropped. His thoughts immediately went to Eli, Sophie, and the mother who had been questioned. What more could there be? "We've found something," the detective continued. "Something that leads us to believe Eli and Sophie weren't just in danger from their mother. There's more to this story. I think it's connected to something much bigger than we initially thought." Keanu's heart raced. The adrenaline from the past hours was still coursing through his veins, but now it had intensified, mixing with an unsettling sense of disbelief. "Wait, what do you mean?" Keanu asked, his voice low, his hand gripping the wheel tighter. The detective sighed, his voice heavy with the weight of the news. "I can't go into all the details, but we found evidence that the mother was part of something illegal, something that involves a larger network of people. We've got leads, but it's going to take some time to unravel. I wanted to let you know so you're prepared. It's not over yet." Keanu absorbed the information, his thoughts racing. What had started as a simple, unexpected encounter in a McDonald's had spiraled into something far more complicated. His role in this story wasn't finished, not by a long shot. There were still questions left unanswered, and as unsettling as it was, Keanu knew he couldn't walk away now, not when so many lives were on the line. "Thank you for the update, Detective," Keanu said, his voice steady despite the flood of emotions rushing through him. "Keep me posted. I'll be waiting to hear more." As he hung up, Keanu sat there for a moment, his eyes fixed on the darkened street ahead of him. The quiet had returned, but it felt different now. The sense of calm he had felt earlier was gone, replaced with a quiet determination. He couldn't leave things unfinished. Not now. In the distance, the faint hum of city lights flickered like stars in the night. But for Keanu, it wasn't the lights that beckoned him now. It was the call to action. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He had a purpose, and something told him that his journey was far from over. Keanu couldn't shake the weight of the detective's words. The deeper he dug, the more complex everything became. What had started as a chance encounter with a woman in need now seemed entangled in something much darker. His mind raced as he navigated through the implications of what Detective Harris had revealed. Who could be behind it all? And why? As the days passed, Keanu found himself haunted by questions he couldn't answer. The unsettling images of Sophie and Eli's pleading faces stayed with him. They had been through so much already. What kind of people would put them in harm's way? Keanu couldn't sit idly by, not when there was still more to uncover. He found himself back at the diner the next evening, sitting in the same booth where he and Lena had exchanged stories and laughter. But tonight the air was different. There was a tension, a quiet anticipation hanging in the air. Lena was working behind the counter, her eyes catching Keanu's as he walked in. A soft, familiar smile crept onto her face, but even she seemed to sense that things weren't as they once were. "Keanu," she greeted him, her voice warm but cautious. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon. What's on your mind?" Keanu hesitated for a moment, unsure how to explain everything without revealing too much. He didn't want to drag Lena into something dangerous, but she had been there when everything started. She deserved to know the truth. I'm trying to figure something out," Keanu said quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of his thoughts. "There's more to the situation with Sophie and Eli, more than what we first realized. I need your help." Lena paused, setting down the dish she was cleaning. Her eyes softened, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "What kind of help are we talking about?" Keanu glanced around the diner, making sure no one was listening. "I need to know more about the mother, about her history. I think she's tied to something bigger than what anyone's letting on. Something dangerous." Lena's face tightened, her expression serious now. She clearly understood the gravity of what Keanu was saying. "I can try to get you some information," she said after a long pause, "but you need to be careful. People like that, they don't play by the rules." Keanu nodded, his gaze fixed on Lena's eyes. There was no turning back now. He had to see this through for the sake of the kids and for his own peace of mind. As he sat there, he realized how deeply involved he had become in this web of uncertainty. The chance encounter that had felt so insignificant at the start now felt like fate pulling him into something much larger than he had ever anticipated. But Keanu wasn't afraid. If anything, he felt a growing determination, the need to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. He had made his decision. There was no going back. The next few days were a blur for Keanu. As Lena promised, she had gathered information, though it wasn't easy to get. Some things were too deep, too buried, for anyone to easily find. But Lena, with her connections, had managed to pull some strings, and now Keanu had what he needed. Late one evening, as the moonlight poured through his apartment window, Keanu sat at his kitchen table, poring over the documents Lena had given him. His mind raced, piecing together the fragments of information. The truth was slowly coming into focus. Sophie's mother, it turned out, had a history of involvement in organized crime. Nothing overt, nothing that would immediately suggest the danger that was looming, but enough to tie her to people who played by a much more brutal set of rules. The name of a shadowy figure kept appearing, a man by the name of Ivan Orlov, a man with ties to the underworld, a man who would stop at nothing to protect his empire. Keanu's stomach churned as he read the details. Ivan Orlov was a man with a ruthless reputation, and it was clear from the records that Sophie's mother had crossed him. But why? What had happened between them? Was it a business deal gone wrong, or was it something more personal? Keanu stared at the papers, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This was bigger than he had imagined. And now, it seemed like Sophie and Eli were caught in the middle. With this new information, Keanu knew that he had to act quickly. He couldn't let these kids, these innocent, vulnerable kids, be dragged into this world of danger. But he was just one man. What could he possibly do against a man like Ivan Orlov? As Keanu wrestled with these questions, The ringing of his phone snapped him out of his thoughts. He glanced at the screen. It was Lena. "Keanu," she said breathlessly when he answered. "I found something else. It's worse than we thought. Orlov. He's not just after Sophie's mother. He's after the kids now. He's making his move, and it's happening tonight." Keanu's heart raced. "Where are they?" Lena's voice was strained. "I don't know, but you need to get to them fast. You're the only one who can stop him." Without a second thought, Keanu grabbed his jacket and headed out the door. The clock was ticking, and the stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just about uncovering secrets anymore. It was about saving lives. And if there was one thing Keanu couldn't live with, it was knowing he had failed to protect the people who needed him. The air felt colder than usual as Keanu rushed through the city streets. The rhythmic thrum of his boots against the pavement echoed in his ears, louder with each step, as if the very ground was reminding him of the urgency of the moment. Lena's words had been like a slap to his face. Ivan Orlov wasn't just a shadow lurking in the background anymore. He was moving, and fast. Keanu's mind raced. Where could Sophie and Eli be? What had made Orlov suddenly make his move? Had he realized they knew too much? Was he coming for them because of something they had? Or had it been the mention of Sophie's mother that had tipped him off, that had set him in motion? Keanu pushed those thoughts aside. There was no time for second-guessing. He had to get to them first. His phone buzzed again, Lena's name flashing across the screen. He answered quickly, breathless. "Keanu, I don't know where they are." Lena's voice crackled through the line, a mix of fear and frustration in her tone. "But I've been getting calls from a private number. They're watching us. They know we're getting too close. We can't stay in one place for too long." Keanu cursed under his breath. Every move he made felt like he was being watched, like he was being hunted. He had to think fast, but there was one place he knew would be safe. An old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. He'd used it for hiding out before, a place with no cameras, no prying eyes. "I'm on my way," Keanu said, hanging up the phone and speeding toward the edge of the city. As he drove, his thoughts flickered back to the files Lena had given him. Ivan Orlov's empire was vast, and it was clear that no one was off limits. Keanu had always known there were dangers lurking in the shadows of the city, but this was different. This wasn't just about crime and power anymore. This was about protecting people, about stopping a monster who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. But as Keanu reached the outskirts of the city, something felt off. He slowed down, scanning the empty roads for any signs of danger. The streets were quiet, but too quiet. It was a strange, ominous calm before the storm. Then his headlights caught a glimpse of something. Figures moving in the distance, almost ghost-like in the dark. Keanu's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't tell if they were after him, or if they were simply trying to remain hidden. But one thing was for sure. He wasn't alone anymore. The chase had begun. Keanu's heart pounded in his chest as he pulled into the abandoned warehouse parking lot. The cold wind whipped through the empty streets, carrying with it an unsettling silence. His car skidded to a halt, and the engine cut off with a low hum. For a moment, Keanu sat still, his eyes scanning the shadows surrounding him. The place felt deserted, just as he had hoped. No one was here. At least that's what he wanted to believe. But a gnawing sense of dread clawed at him, urging him to move quickly, to not linger for too long. His mind flashed back to the figures he'd seen through his headlights, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still watching, waiting. Keanu took a deep breath, exiting the car with his hand hovering near his gun. He didn't want to draw attention, but he knew better than to be caught off guard. As he approached the warehouse's rusted metal doors, he paused, listening. Nothing, not a sound. He reached for the door handle, but before his fingers could make contact, a muffled voice broke the silence. "Keanu." He froze. The voice was unmistakable. "Lena." He turned sharply, his instincts kicking in, but the figure that stepped out of the shadows wasn't Lena. It was a man, tall and menacing, his features obscured by a dark hood. Keanu's pulse quickened as the man spoke again, his voice low and calculated. "Looking for her, are you? You should have stayed away from Orloff's business, Reeves. Now you're in too deep." Keanu's grip on his gun tightened, but he didn't draw it yet. "Who the hell are you?" The man chuckled darkly, stepping closer, the faint light revealing the cold gleam of a knife tucked into his belt. "I'm the one who's going to make sure you never see her again." The tension in the air thickened as the man took another step forward. Keanu didn't have time to waste. He reached for his gun, his movements swift and precise. But before he could draw it, the sound of tires screeching to a halt echoed in the distance. Keanu's eyes darted toward the sound, but it was too late. The man lunged at him with a growl. Keanu dodged, rolling to the side, just as the man swung the knife toward him. He scrambled to his feet, heart racing, adrenaline surging through his veins. He wasn't just fighting for his own life anymore. He was fighting for Lena, Sophie, and Eli. He had to end this now. The man came at him again, and Keanu blocked the strike with a swift kick to his chest. The force sent the man crashing into a pile of old crates, but he wasn't out yet. He rose to his feet with a snarl, ready to fight to the death. But just as the man lunged once more, a shot rang out, piercing the night air. The figure froze, his body going limp. Keanu's eyes widened in disbelief. From the shadows, Lena emerged, her expression cold and determined. In her hand was a gun, smoke still rising from the barrel. "You should have stayed out of it," Lena said, her voice steady, unwavering. Keanu looked at her, a mix of relief and confusion crossing his face. "Lena, what the hell is going on?" Lena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she lowered the gun, stepping closer to Keanu. "This is bigger than you realize. Orloff won't stop. He'll keep coming until we take him down for good." The two exchanged a look of understanding, a silent agreement passing between them. They were in this together now, and there was no turning back. Keanu's head spun as he followed Lena through the maze of darkened hallways inside the warehouse. Her steps were swift and purposeful, but Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had seen Lena as a trusted ally, but there was something in her eyes, a glint of something he couldn't place. She turned to him, her voice softer now. "You have to understand, Keanu. Orloff isn't just some thug. He's connected to things you can't even imagine. The people he's working with, they don't stop at anything. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." Keanu slowed his pace, trying to keep his emotions in check. His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle that had unfolded over the last few days. "Lena, I've been in the dark this whole time. Why didn't you tell me the full truth? Why the games?" Lena stopped, her back to him for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice cracked slightly. "Because I didn't want to involve you. Couldn't. You're different, Keanu. Look, I couldn't drag you into this mess. But you're already in it, and you have to know what's coming." She turned back to him, her face illuminated by a dim overhead light. "The man I'm working with, the one who pulled me into this, is someone you've known all along. He's close to you." Keanu's breath caught in his throat. "What are you talking about?" Lena stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "It's your father, Keanu. He's the one behind it all. Orloff is just a pawn. Your father has been orchestrating everything from the shadows. The company, the money laundering, the lives ruined. It's all him." Keanu's world tilted on its axis. His father, the man who had always been his hero, his guiding force, was the mastermind behind all of this. His mind couldn't process it fast enough. No, that can't be right," Keanu whispered, shaking his head. "My father would never do something like that. He's been nothing but good to me, to everyone." Lena took a deep breath. Her expression hardened with the weight of truth. "I know it's hard to believe, but the evidence is there. I've seen it with my own eyes. Your father is ruthless. And if you don't stop him now, you're going to lose everything, including Sophie and Eli. Keanu's heart sank as the words hit him like a sledgehammer. The thought of losing Sophie and Eli, the two people he had promised to protect, was unbearable. "We have to stop him, Keanu," Lena continued, her voice steady despite the gravity of what she was saying. "We can't let him continue this. We can't let him ruin more lives." Keanu stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing with the truth. His father, the man he'd trusted above all else, was behind the web of corruption and crime he'd been chasing. The betrayal cut deep, but there was no time to dwell on it. His family, his friends, and his future were on the line. "I won't let him hurt anyone else," Keanu said, his voice filled with a resolve he hadn't felt before. Lena nodded, her face softening slightly. "Then we do this together. We bring him down no matter the cost." Keanu's resolve solidified as he looked at Lena, seeing the determination in her eyes. He knew that the battle ahead would be fierce, but he couldn't back down now, not when so much was at stake. The two of them walked deeper into the warehouse, ready to face the storm that awaited them. The air inside the warehouse felt thick with tension as Keanu and Lena approached the heart of the operation. Every step echoed, each one bringing them closer to the truth, to the moment that would change everything. The walls seemed to close in around them as they made their way to the inner sanctum, the place where it all began, and where it would all end. Keanu's mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts, but one thing was clear. He couldn't back down. Not after everything he had learned. Not after what was at stake. His father's betrayal had shattered everything he had believed in, but the fight for his future, for Sophie, for Eli, was far from over. They reached the inner chamber, the one that had been kept off limits, the one where the highest stakes were played. Keanu's eyes scanned the dark room, the air filled with the faint hum of machinery. It looked like a war room. Maps, monitors, and documents scattered across the room, and standing at the center, as if waiting for them, was the last person Keanu ever expected to see, his father. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as Keanu's gaze locked with a man who had been his hero, the man who had built everything he had ever known. But now, the man standing before him was nothing like the father Keanu had grown up with. This was a man consumed by greed, power, and secrets. "Keanu." His father's voice was calm, but there was a coldness to it that made Keanu's blood run cold. "I've been expecting you." Keanu's heart pounded in his chest, his hands trembling at his sides. You're behind all of this. The money laundering, the corruption, the lives ruined. Why, Dad? Why did you do it?" His father smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "It's simple, Keanu. Power, control, and the chance to give you everything you ever wanted." He gestured around the room. "Everything I've done for you, for us. You were always too naive to see it. Lusaf, but you're learning, aren't you?" Keanu's eyes narrowed. "This is how you wanted me to learn. By betraying me. By destroying everything I care about." His father's smile faded, replaced by a hard, calculating look. "You don't understand. You never did. You've been so focused on playing the good guy, the hero, that you've missed the truth. There's no room for softness in this world. Only those who seize power survive. And I've done whatever it takes to ensure that you'll survive. If you're smart, you'll join me. If not, well, then you'll be a casualty of this war." Lena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Keanu, don't listen to him. He's a liar. He's been using you all along." Keanu glanced at Lena, her words echoing in his mind. The betrayal, the manipulation, it was all a game to his father. But Keanu wouldn't be a pawn any longer. He couldn't let his father's cruelty define him. He had to take a stand. "You're wrong, Dad," Keanu said, his voice filled with resolve. "I don't need your power, your money, or your empire. I've learned something far more valuable in all of this. What it means to fight for what's right, to protect the people I love. You may have thought you could control me, but you've underestimated me. And I won't let you destroy everything I believe in." His father's expression darkened, and for the first time, Keanu saw the true menace in his eyes. You think you can stop me? You're nothing. I've built this empire from the ground up. I've sacrificed everything for it. And you think you can just walk away from it? Keanu's grip tightened, his heart racing. The final battle was upon them. He didn't know how this would end, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let his father destroy any more lives. Not today. Not ever. Lena stepped to Keanu's side. Her face set in determination. We'll stop you, Keanu's father. This ends now. As the confrontation escalated, the air crackled with the weight of the moment. This was no longer about a fight for justice. It was about family, about the shattered trust between father and son, and about the hope that Keanu could forge a future that was free from the darkness his father had created. The standoff in the warehouse had reached its peak. The room was thick with tension, every second stretching longer than the last. Keanu's pulse hammered in his ears, his heart beating not just for the final showdown, but for the future that hung in the balance. His father's eyes burned with fury, yet there was something more, something deeper, lurking behind them. Fear. A fear of losing everything he had built. A fear that his son, the one he had tried to control and mold, had outgrown him. Keanu wasn't the naive boy his father thought he could manipulate anymore. Keanu had chosen his own path. And now he stood face to face with a man who had caused so much pain, not just for Keanu, but for so many others. I don't want your empire, Keanu said, his voice firm, cutting through the tension. I don't need any of this. What I need is something real, and I'm not going to let you take that from me. For the first time, his father seemed rattled. You think you can walk away from all of this? His voice was harsh, desperate. You think you can throw away everything I've given you? Keanu shook his head. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm walking away from your lies, from your manipulation. I'm choosing my own future, one that doesn't include you. And you know what? I'm not doing it alone. Lena's eyes met Keanu's, her presence beside him steady, unwavering. We're in this together, Keanu. And we'll see this through. His father sneered. You think she can save you? She's just a distraction, a weakness. You'll never be strong enough without me. But Keanu wasn't listening anymore. He stepped forward, a finality in his movement. You've made your choices, Dad, and I've made mine. You wanted to control me, to make me like you. But I'm nothing like you, and I never will be. A deep silence fell over the room, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, with a soft click, the sound of sirens pierced the stillness. It was the sound of justice, of the consequences that had been waiting to catch up with Keanu's father. His empire, his carefully crafted world of corruption, was beginning to crumble. You're done, Keanu said quietly. It's over. The look on his father's face twisted from anger to a deep, cold resignation. His empire had been his life, but now it was slipping through his fingers. Lena stepped forward, her expression resolute. It's time for you to face what you've done. There's no running anymore. Keanu turned to Lena, his eyes softening. Thank you. For everything. She smiled, her hand resting on his shoulder. No need to thank me. We're in this together. Always. The sirens grew louder, closer. Keanu knew what was about to happen. His father would be taken away, the weight of his crimes catching up with him. But for Keanu, this wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming his future, about choosing a new path, one where he was no longer defined by his father's shadow. As the authorities burst through the doors, Keanu and Lena shared a quiet moment, knowing that this chapter was closing and another brighter one was just beginning.